Hey guys, today I've got a review of one of the best battery-powered landscaping tools ever made. I've had this tool for about 5 years, and this is a very long-term review considering the amount of hours I put on this thing. Hundreds of hours. I've used this thing in so many jobs. So before we go any further, let me show you what this little thing can do. I'm not really sure what kind of wood this is, but it's very dry, very hard wood. It's extremely agile and it's pretty light just due to its size. It does have a little tiny bit of weight to it, but I think most people are going to be able to operate this just fine one-handed. I do a lot of brush cutting type stuff in my jobs. I do more cutting of smaller branches, brush type stuff, than I do bigger cutting. And of course there is a time when you need a more powerful chainsaw than this, obviously, but I go for this chainsaw more than any of my other saws. I've always got my Echo 40cc gas saw on me for, you know, small, medium type stuff. It's not a real powerful saw either, but this thing gets done majority of what I'm cutting on my jobs. To operate the saw, there's a safety button right here. It is also on the other side, which is great. Once it is running, you do not need to keep this button pressed in. You've got a handle like a guard right here. If you do want to use the saw with both hands, you got a little extra protection there. So I will say that just due to the small size of the saw, it is pretty jumpy. It'll skip around quite a lot, especially if you're doing a back cut on the top. If you're using the top of the saw, I really don't use this saw for doing back cuts very much. Now you certainly can if you get used to it, but just keep in mind it skips around a lot doing a back cut on the top of the saw. This thing has got a tiny little oil reservoir, and the oil still seems to last a pretty long time. It's just kind of like with any other chainsaw. If you're cutting fresh wood that has a lot of moisture in it, the oil seems to last a lot longer than if you're cutting dry wood. So it's mostly full right now, but I just want to show you guys how little it takes to fill this thing up. So I'm going to go ahead and dump this oil back into the jug here. Okay, it's pretty empty. So this is all it takes. Got to pour it very slowly. Full. That's it. What was that? About a shot and a half? A double, maybe? So it just sips on the bar oil. You're barely going to use anything in this saw. This saw came with a little mini scrunch, but I haven't known where that is for a little while, so I've got my regular one right here. Go ahead and open this case up. Oh, and just in case you guys are wondering, I think a normal size, full size bar nut, like one you'd find on a steel or something, would work on here. I've got one on my pole saw, by the way, so I do believe a larger full-size bar nut would fit on there and work. Okay, so we got a little 6-inch chain here. This chain is generally a little bit harder to get off than on a larger saw, but not much. It just gets caught in there a little bit. All right, let's see how quickly I can put it back on, because I do remember usually, as you can see, it kind of gets a little hung up there sometimes. Not bad at all. I remember it being a little bit more tricky than that. I guess I've just gotten used to it. Sometimes when I put this case back on, it gets hung up a little bit right here. I think it's kind of doing it right now, so just make sure it's fully seated flush like that. With this little 6-inch chain, it really doesn't take many turns to get it from completely loose like this to tight. And I'd like to point out, it is a little hard to get to stay sometimes. I don't know if that's because the chain is so short, but it wants to sort of just bounce right back sometimes. So I'll just kind of hold the chain like that a little bit. The nice thing is, even if this gets loose, this chain will very rarely come off of this bar. Out of all the times, hundreds of times I've used this saw, guys, I've I've got hundreds of hours on this saw. I have used this thing so much. It is held up true to the Milwaukee name, and it's very hard to get this chain to come off of this bar, which is great because I use it for a lot of brush cut. Okay, the battery life. The battery lasts great on this thing. It's amazing. If you're using it for what it's intended for maybe 2-inch cuts or something like that, it'll do so many of them. Now, if you're cutting stuff like this, like I just cut earlier, the battery is going to go a bit quicker if you're doing this over and over. The only single problem that I've had with the saw actually had nothing to do with the saw at all. It was with the battery tabs on this one. These are the little locking tabs. They wore off over time, ended up breaking off. And I just noticed that this was pretty loose after a while. It would come off partially like that. And then it just kind of got looser and looser to where it kept falling off, and the saw would turn off because it wasn't connected anymore just from the vibrations of using it and whatnot. So put a new battery on there and we're good to go. Let's see what this bad boy can do on a job I used it on. All right, I highly recommend this tool. It is so useful. And of course, they've got the 18-volt version too. If you've maybe got the M18 batteries, you don't have any of the 12-volt batteries, or you just want something a little bit more bigger and powerful, it seems like both would be great options. Thanks for watching.